finally, my third point, which has got 27 subpoints. He is who he is because he is like the Father. I'm waiting for all the ladies to go, "Aww." He is who he is because he's like the Father. Hebrews 1 verse 3 says, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. I have 3 sons. You probably know that. I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I have 3 sons, and in different ways, they are all like Barbie and I. In fact, they can't help that. Because so much of their DNA, I don't know what the percentage is, the medical people here, you would know that, I haven't looked this up, but so much of their DNA is made up by Barbie and I. And some of their DNA is made up by their grandparents and some by their great-grandparents, none of it by a gorilla in the rainforest, you understand. So it's all made up. I know they might look like it at times, but it's all made up by our DNA. And some of their attributes, some of their personality things, some of their looks are attributed to us. So some of you will look at some of my sons and you might say about one of them, gosh, he looks like you. And I go, yeah, he's a handsome guy, isn't he? You know, he's just... Some of you will say, oh, he looks like his mum. Yeah, he's pretty. You know, never tell a boy that he looks like his mother. Please, what are you saying? You're pretty. Never say that to a boy. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear you're manly and handsome. But if you have girls, you understand what I'm saying. That there is a family resemblance, a family likeness. There are even things that come out in their humor that they don't want to admit. They will say to me, Dad, you're simply not funny. I know, I'm shocked as well. But they will say that to me, you're not funny, you're not humorous. But then they will come out with the same kind of humor. Because some of that isn't just grown up because they've been reared in our family. Some of that is just built into them and they can't help it. In fact, let me put it this way to those of us who are a bit more mature and grown up. Those of us who have got to the latter stages of our life. Do you ever look in the mirror and think, my goodness, my dad's looking back at me? Or your mum's looking back at you. I look in the mirror and I think, oh, hello, Mum. Yeah, she wasn't pretty. No. Forgive me, Lord. Sometimes we catch ourselves, though, don't we? Saying and doing the things that we said we'd never do, but that we've learnt because it's part of us. They're still part of us. And what is being said here is that the Son is part of the Father. He is like him. The Message translates Hebrew 1 verse 3 as this. The Son perfectly mirrors God and is stamped with God's nature. The New Living Translation says the Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God. These words further elevate Jesus above anyone else who's ever lived. Some brief things then from these verses in Hebrew. Jesus came to show God's glory. He came to show God's glory. The Son is the radiance of God's glory. Radiance, this word is made up of 2 Greek words. It's made up of brilliant light, in other words, self-emanating, and it's also, the closest we could come is really mirror that actually reflects light as well. So what's being said here is in that word radiance and brightness is that Jesus has his own glory because he's part of the Godhead, he's part of the Trinity, but he also reflects God's glory as well. And as they read this, they would have understood that the one who had always been invisible, whose name they dare not speak, had actually walked the earth and was given a name, because they would have understood that when they saw the presence of God on Mount Sinai, the glory of the Lord in Exodus 24, and you can compare that with Leviticus 9:23 about the glory of God, that what is being said is that in these last days, the same glory has been revealed in Jesus Christ. The same glory. Now, without understanding all the Jewish nature of that, but we need to understand that this is the most powerful statement that can be made, that Jesus is God and God is Jesus, and that the two are one in this sense. And he shares this glory. Jesus said he shared this glory in heaven. In John 17 verse 5, he says, "And now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the earth began." He brought that glory to earth in his incarnation. In John 1 verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace, full of truth. And he displayed it in unexpected moments. This is the wonder of it. In Luke chapter 9 verse 29, as he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning. He came to show us God's glory, and also he came to show us God's nature. The nature of God. In Hebrews 1:3, he's described as the exact representation of his being. The Greek word here, and I don't want to lose you, I'm going a bit pacey, but the Greek word here for representation, I can actually say this Greek word. It's character. Interesting. Character, it's spelled differently, but it's character. It means an exact expression, an impression that was actually used when a coin was minted. You could tell if the coin was valid by the character of the coin. The same word was used when applying seals, that actually on the signet ring of those who wrote. And the other week at Bible Cafe, Pat was demonstrating the seal. Some of you would have been there, where the impression was placed in the seal. The character was placed there. He's the exact representation of his being. His Greek word for being is hypostasis, which means substance. He's the exact substance. In other words, he's made of the same stuff God is made of. Isn't that amazing? What's God made of? Well, we don't know. We know he's spirit, but we don't know. He's certainly not made of the same stuff we are. But Jesus is made of the same stuff God is. Isn't that incredible? And to these Hebrew readers who are reading this for the first time, they would have suddenly realized in the first few verses where this book was going. Because Jesus, they are being told, he's made of the same stuff as God, and he has the same character as God. So if you want to know what God is like, look to Jesus. In Colossians 1:15, we read, he's the image of the invisible God. And to these Jewish readers, that was a significant statement. That awesome, invisible, transcendent God had become man with them. All the fullness of the deity lives in bodily form in Christ, Colossians 2. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. The writer is telling us it's perfectly possible to see the expressions and character of God through Jesus Christ.